Well, a crowded race for the 15th District State Senate race has left voters with a list of candidates for the May 6th primary. 4 Republicans are pitted against each other, and 1 Democrat is running unopposed.
This week, we have already spoken with 3 of the 4 Republican candidates. Today, News Channel 15's Rod Hissong is live in Studio 15 with the 4th GOP contender. Rod, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Tara and Pat. Good morning, everyone. The man to my right is Ken Freeze on the Republican ballot here in the primary. You may know him as the current Allen County Sheriff. And Ken, thanks for joining us this morning. Glad you could get up early.
Glad to be here.
As the sheriff, you're term limited, so you can't run for another 4 years. But let me ask you about transitioning possibly from sheriff to state senate. Would you consider yourself a politician?
I don't consider myself a politician, but my wife said that once you run for political office and are elected, you become a politician. So I guess in the sincere definition of the word, yes.
So would you say that you don't have any political experience then running for this office?
The political experience I have, I think, running for sheriff, you know, you run for a party to become the sheriff, and once you get elected, you are not a Republican or Democrat, you're the sheriff. So I live with that. The secretary that we had for 3 years asked me after 3 years, are you Republican or Democrat? So I think I did a good job then representing all the people.
All right, let's talk about one of your central campaign themes, and that's job creation. There's a big push federally right now to get the minimum wage up. Do you support raising the minimum wage in Indiana regardless of what happens nationally?
No. No, minimum wage is where you're supposed to start. That's the bottom of the rung. We shouldn't start climbing the ladder in the middle of the ladder. You start at the bottom and then hopefully work your way up to where you're making a decent wage. That's where you begin.
Do you think $7.25, though, is a good place to begin, considering what things cost today?
I do. I think it's a good place to start.
Do you think that puts the state at a competitive disadvantage? Every state that touches Indiana, with the exception of Kentucky, has a higher minimum wage. Do you think there's a potential that jobs could be going elsewhere, or people could be going out of the state to get higher paying jobs?
I don't think so when you're looking at the difference between $7.25 an hour and $8.25 an hour. Like I say, that's where we're supposed to start. And I think what we really want to attract here are the higher paying jobs. We do need entry-level jobs here, the service-oriented jobs, but we also want those people to try to achieve more. We don't want somebody to start in an entry-level position and stay there. The phrase I've always used growing up and we taught our kids is good is never good enough. We can always do better. And that's what we want to have people do, is always try to do better.
Let's talk about job creation and the push in the state to obviously get the corporate tax down, the business personal property tax down, to get jobs that are high-paying jobs, which would then in turn fuel the economy. You're not in favor of shovel-ready sites by counties, correct?
That's correct.
What is something that you would, I mean, if you have counties that would be competing against one another with the elimination of that business personal property tax and not having shovel-ready sites, how then would you try and attract new business?
I think we need to look at it regionally instead of by the counties. And statewide, you know, when we have regions that are trying to attract those businesses in here, because you're right, we're trying to attract large businesses that are going to employ many people, not just from one county, but from several counties. And I think that's what we need to push for. I think making sure that we eliminate that tax allows those businesses to put that money back into the business and not pay that tax. And that's, government should not try to create jobs. That is not what government should do. We should try to reduce regulations and clear the path for more businesses to come in here.
In an April 20th article in the Journal-Gazette, you were quoted, and you were making an example comparing to the tanning bed law that was recently passed. You said, quote, "We have no business as government sticking our noses into parents' business like that." You went on to say, people are tired of all the government regulations. You've also campaigned on being pro-family. At what point does the government not get involved with family situations, such as the proposal to ban gay marriage through the Constitution?
Yeah, and see, I'm one that believes that marriage is between a man and a woman. I don't think the government's sticking their nose in when they start addressing that, but I also believe that needs to go to the voters. I think that's where it should lie. It should lie in the hands of the voters. I wish it would have gone this November. It probably will go next November, but I think that's where the decision should be made. When it comes to something like the whole tanning bed thing, it troubles me that we as Republicans, we're trying to get smaller government, and yet we stick our Republican noses in those families. And are we going to get to the point then where we say, okay, parents, you're not allowed to now let your 16-year-old daughter go out in the sun without an umbrella? I think we need to be careful what lines we cross.
Let's get into education. Well, when you first announced you were against Common Core,
right.
That's gone.
Right.
You were in favor of you were in favor of new Indiana standards. Those have been passed. A lot of unanswered questions still about what these new standards are, but there was a push to get the federal government out of states' education classrooms, but now there's kind of a push that local school districts want the states out of their classrooms. What role does the state have in education?
I think the state needs to set the standards. I would hate to see that, Fort Wayne Community Schools can set a standard, but then you have Gary setting different standards. I think the state needs to set the minimum standards. Now, if you have a community that wants to set higher standards, I have no problem with that, but I think there has to be a minimum set by the state. We wanted the federal government, I think, out of our lives more and more if possible. And I think what really happened, we got the people in the state of Indiana really upset about what the federal government was doing with Common Core, and I think mining the information from our children was one of the big things that really bothered people. And the way some of these standards are written, it's difficult to even understand what is this second grader supposed to be able to read by the time he goes to third grade. We have to be careful of new standards. There are only so many different ways that you can write a standard. But I think we as legislators need to make sure we keep an eye on that and make sure that there's the standards that we want in place.
All right, we're out of time, Ken. Thanks for coming in this morning. We appreciate you talking about some of the issues. Our interview series continues tomorrow morning when Democrat Jack Morris joins us. As mentioned earlier, Darren Vogt, Jeff Snyder, and Liz Brown have joined us earlier in the week.